So we'll use the How Are You quiz as an example of using the UDL tool. This is a toolkit we'll be using. It's based on finally a project, as I mentioned before. We may decide to develop further in the light of your experience of using it. It's available in the Learning Materials folder. In this presentation, as mentioned, we'll use here as a case study. We'll be quite critical of here, which is perhaps a little bit unfair because it is a national survey and lots of people have used it, over 2 million, and no doubt many people have benefited from it. So the opinions here are mine. You may wish to disagree. This is the process. You should first look at the campaign you're interested in, so you will need to have chosen one. Kelly provided some information for you, and there's other resources available. Think about the goals of the campaign and the material used. When you've done this, review the campaign using the toolkit on a yes or no basis. Then do something else. Set the exercise aside for a few days and repeat the process. Examine your original judgments. Decide if you want to change them. In either case, if you want to keep them or not, write a short justification for each decision. Later, you'll write a short summary of your overall findings, but we'll talk about scientific writing before that. Good news is this analysis will be copied directly into your report for the assessment. Okay, so these results may be a little hard to see on the screen, but can be found in the document listed there, L02a NH UDL toolkit here. The first 3 questions about the general aims of the campaign and its target audience. Later we'll drill into details about effectiveness. I won't necessarily review each question individually unless it's particularly appropriate. But for this initial questions, question 1 is a yes, in that users are encouraged to engage with a range of health-related questions focused on themselves. Question 2 is a no, for the reason that the target audience is effectively everyone in the country, without any attempt to address different groups. This will be a theme which comes back, and I say it's just an issue with national campaigns. It's not necessarily a criticism of here. Question 3 again is a no. There are no opportunities to provide user feedback. This is quite a bit of an omission, and we'll maybe think about ways to deal with that later. Yes, so question 2.1, I've skipped answering that question because it's quite detailed, and we'll discuss this in the tutorial. It may be that, well, it's something that we can look, but we can look at it. I think we need to know a little bit more about it. Many dyslexic people are sensitive to the glare of a white background on a page, whiteboard, or computer screen, which can make the reading of text much harder. Use of coloured backgrounds or coloured filters can make reading more comfortable. This does require some technical knowledge and skills which may not be available to anyone who might use a quiz. For example, they might not even have a diagnosis for dyslexia, which is often a problem, especially with students. If anyone thinks they have issues, they should contact the university services, who will be happy to help you get a diagnosis for this issue. Okay, so 2 related questions about the visual appearance of the screen. Tech-savvy users will know how to change the text size, etc. But again, this may not be true of many people using the quiz. As I think I mentioned in the previous presentation lecture, the use of colloquialisms like really knackered may exclude many people who just don't know what it means. And additionally, the use of sliders might be problematic for some reason, so I've put in a couple of no's for these here. One of the main issues with here is its reliance on visual information, particularly text information, which excludes many people with visual impairments. As noted in the comments for 2.5, users with learning difficulty may need more time or different modes of presentation to effectively process the information. That's classic UDL theory there. If you look at the UDL lecture, you'll see it's right in there. Inevitably, cost is probably the reason why text-to-speech, captions, and British Sign Language are not available. However, since here was developed, the first of these two have become very widespread, and implementation might well be more practical now. As for BSL and other languages, here's a possibility. Public health professionals do rightly point out the cost of multilingual approaches, so we may need to look more widely. So how about crowdsourcing solutions to additional language options? There are plenty of people out there with the skills, the knowledge, and the willingness to help. How do you think this could be organised, both locally and nationally? This is something that we actually really want students to look at. It could be a big deal in helping deliver the effectiveness of the things we're talking about here. Okay, so question 2.10 probably need to be a little earlier in the quiz along with other related material, so we'll probably look at this later on. Again, the answer for this is no. For the other two questions, yes, there's some good uses of images and icons, but the caption, of course, is only in English. There are very detailed UK guidelines on accessibility, and it's arguable that assessment using this is a major exercise in itself and may not be appropriate for a toolkit-based approach, which is meant to be a rapid analysis tool. So we'll consider that and decide whether we include this question at all. Question 12.12 looks at visible focus indicators, and here does pretty well in this respect. So in the example down here, this hypothetical person smokes every day, so that's been highlighted, and there's also a button saying next, because that's the button that's pressed next. Skip links are internal page links which aid navigation around the current page rather than to completely new pages. They're mainly used by screen reader users for bypassing or skipping over repetitive web page content. Now, if you haven't come across a screen reader, it's a software application that enables people with severe visual impairments to use a computer. If you dig into things like Microsoft Teams, you'll find there's quite a lot of this technology embedded in this. The accessibility statement here notes some issues with screen reader, so they are thinking about it. Similarly, issues are acknowledged for the W3C Easy Check guidelines. Now, this video here is well worth having a look at. It's a good review, and we might think about incorporating this model into the UDL toolkit. Have a look at it and tell me what you think. Okay, so advice and comments. Periodically, text comments are presented to the user. They're very generic, however. Some advice on short-term goals is providing these comments, but again, they're very generic. So I've given them yeses there, but they're both pretty qualified yeses. Cultural background, population issues, diet, fasting, cultural issues. None of these issues are included in the quiz design. The designers of the quiz might argue that they are a bit outside the scope of the quiz, and that may be a legitimate defence. And as mentioned before, it's probably a cost-time issue to which there may be solutions available. And I guess if we found solutions which work well in one intervention, one campaign, there's no reason why they shouldn't work well in other campaigns as well. So the recommendations on physical activity in general, an area that benefit from more work. Again, it's addressing everyone. It looks at age, it looks at gender, but there's much more to people than just those two particular areas. There are lots of guidelines available nationally, but are they effective? The answer, it seems to be, is not particularly. So do you have any suggestions in this area, how we might improve things? Mentoring. Mentoring is a learning support mechanism where an experienced person provides guidance, knowledge and advice to someone. Perhaps unsurprisingly, mentoring is not really addressed in this national resource. It's seen as very much a one-to-one exercise, which probably means local delivery, and there are a limited number of trained professionals. You can read this NHS resource if you're interested, but it isn't necessary for the purpose of this exercise. There's also the development of online mentoring using artificial intelligence-based systems. What do you think about developments like this? Do they have a future? Billing and health messages. Hyperlinks, again, limitations of national tool are evident here. The quiz doesn't ask for location information such as postcode, which makes linking to local resources as you go through the quiz hard to do. We need to bear in mind there may be issues associated with data protection and not allowing individuals to be identified, although as we'll see later on, the quiz does offer a resource, a link where you send you quite some location information about yourself, so maybe that's not really an issue. So language we've talked about a few times, both in terms of the use of idiomatic expressions such as full of beans, which may not be understood by everyone, and different spoken or visual languages. This may be another example of us needing to consider the order and content of questions in order to make the UDL tool easy to use. So in terms of these questions, there's a qualified yes and a couple of no's. Again, question 4.6 might have been moved or combined with another question. We'll have to have a look at that. The issues arising from question 4.5 might be another area where crowdsourcing could help us. So it does suggest you getting active community members involved in translation. That's the sort of thing we definitely want to think about. Okay, so social media, there's a lot of potential around that to help develop good outcomes for users. However, evidence for the use of such campaigns from locally suggests that users progressively become less engaged or less regularly encouraged to continue to engage with the campaign. As noted earlier, there's no ability to feedback on the HEY quiz, so I'm afraid 3 no's there, which again, I said before, is perhaps a little bit harsh on what is a national quiz. So scaffolding, perhaps the best known example of scaffolding is the NHS Couch to 5K programme. Self-reflection, which can be very effective with some people, is not addressed particularly in the quiz, although some of the external links may consider this issue. Okay, so these issues are considered in other UDL questions, and this may be another opportunity to refine the tool. The substantive issues, again, reflect on the national nature of the quiz. Yes, for some individual feedback is offered, but it's quite generic, and a couple of no's for community health monitors and links to community services. So we finish with 3 real-life issues: frustration, anxiety and freedom to act, and some examples of them there in the question. Once again, the one-size-fits-all nature of HEY is probably the key issue here. What do you think about the relationship between national campaigns, local action and individual responses, and the effectiveness of these campaigns? Okay, before we finish, just a quick review of the recommendations of HEY produced for a hypothetical individual. This option does provide further service, but maybe more tailoring could be done if at least general location information had been collected as part of the general HEY questionnaire, the questioning tool. Users can search for local sport, and links to other resources are provided, but as a search, resources aren't provided directly. A postcode would allow this to be have a page which upload dynamically. Perhaps looking at people's age, perhaps looking at health issues being identified. There's lots of straightforward stuff can be done in this area now. So again, more local support I think is needed. You're also given a dashboard using the traffic light approach here. So here a hypothetical individual is used and is not doing very well. It's got mostly in the red. There's a link to your results explained page, but notice the small size of the text. Not ideal. And this is the Your Results page, Your Results Explained page, which is pretty generic, it has to be said. It's more about explaining the dashboard as an overall tool rather than your results. So we can do better. So outstanding issues. The UDL tool was developed as part of a final year project and was developed from an academic perspective. One of the consequences of this is the arrangement of headings justifications, which were based on academic approaches. This has led to some possible duplication or not quite optimal arrangement of questions in the tool. This is something we'll need to look at. And of course you're familiar with the other issues. And then we have a blank page, and then that's all folks. So thanks for listening.